The moment this hearing started, it was clear something wasn't right, because this wasn't just another routine exchange between a lawmaker and a defense official. This felt different, tense, unpredictable, like everyone in the room knew something bigger was about to unfold. And within seconds, it did. What you're about to hear isn't just about troop deployments or budgets. It's about something far more serious: the limits of power, the role of the military inside the United States, and whether those lines are starting to blur in ways most people haven't even realized.
Physically assaulted and arrested for attending Secretary Noem's press event. The mere fact that he showed up, he was forcibly removed. Is this how you would treat a member of Congress who attends your press event, whether invited or not?
Well, I've been here for 5 hours, sir. I don't know about that.
I'm just asking, would you have me forcibly removed from your press event
I'm not
if I
going to
walked in?
speculate on a hypothetical. I'm sure there's more context.
I'll take that as a yes. Mr. Secretary, does the DOD have any plans to allow the military to follow the orders of President Trump when his order violates the Constitution? Yes or no?
I reject the premise of that question, which is that President Trump is ordering unconstitutional orders.
I'll take that as a yes as well. Mr. Secretary, the deployment of active duty Marines to California is incredibly disruptive to the lives of service members who are being drawn into the president's publicity stunt. And I want to know how you're planning to take care of these troops. So will you commit to sending my office and this committee a detailed plan on how you plan to house and feed the 700 Marines and potentially thousands of Marines?
What's disruptive is when concrete blocks are thrown at the heads of ICE officers. And so we're proud that National Guardsmen and Marines have responded in real time to help defend those federal law enforcement officers.
So do you have a plan? Do you have a plan to house
Not only do we have
Marines?
a plan, but it's been a focus of mine. I've held a riot shield before in a riot. I recognize what it means to respond in real time without enough time.
Mr. Secretary, will you get me that plan,
everything they can as fast as they can, and we have a plan for that.
Mr. Secretary, I reclaim my plan. Chairwoman, LA Mayor Bass stated that the area placed under the recent curfew is around 1 square mile. Is that the same area where service members will be deployed?
Service members are in Los Angeles to defend law enforcement, ICE agents, and facilities.
So essentially, you're telling me that American people that a 1 square mile block of LA, and for the record, LA County is over 4,700 square miles, warrants the deployment of 700 Marines and the federalization of 4,000 California National Guardsmen. You testified earlier that you will send in the military to protect local law enforcement. Did LAPD Police Chief McDonnell ask you for your help?
I read reports on a regular basis.
Did he ask for your help?
From ICE agents
I'll take that as a no.
More grateful.
Did LA Sheriff Luna ask for you to send in the military, Mr. Secretary? Did LA Sheriff Luna ask you to send in the military? Yes or no?
I don't work for the LA Sheriff, sir.
Well, you said you sent them in to support the military, but they didn't even ask for your, to support law enforcement, but they didn't even ask for your help. Have you been to Los Angeles in the last 7 days?
My team is, from the top down, focused on making sure Los Angeles
I'll also take that as a no. How did you arrive at the decision not to coordinate with local law enforcement and the governor's office on the initial deployment?
It would be great if the governor attempted to actually coordinate instead of grandstand.
All right, so I believe you're secretly deploying troops to an area without coordinating with local officials is somehow not disruptive and to the logistical and operational conditions on the ground. You agree with that?
I would need you to repeat the question, sir.
Does the department plan on coordinating with Governor Newsom's office on local law enforcement going forward, Mr. Secretary?
We've coordinated with local law enforcement quite well, but the governor's been an obstruction to that, of course.
All right, Secretary Hegseth, this political stunt, and by your own admission, is expected to cost the American taxpayer at least $134 million and will disrupt the lives of hundreds and potentially thousands of active duty Marines and 4,000 National Guardsmen. That's $134 million and thousands of personnel diverted away from critical missions in the Indo-Pacific, where China is rapidly expanding from Europe, where NATO needs U.S. support amid growing Russian aggression, and from CENTCOM, where tensions are escalating so critically that your own General Kurilla had to cancel all his testimony in Congress today. Your redirection of combat-ready troops from real-world national security threats to manage a domestic protest is gross mismanagement and a slap in the face of service members whose lives are disrupted throughout this event. As a veteran myself, it's a disgrace, and you should be ashamed. I yield back.
The gentleman's
Madam
time
Chair,
has expired.
Madam Chair, can we add into record, please, that the gentleman from California has just stated that it is okay to have 1 mile of complete criminality in L.A. so long as it doesn't cover the 4700.
That was not my statement.
Madam Chair,
that it's
Mills,
okay.
Mr. Mills has not been recognized.
This is absolutely
Neither
absurd.
neither gentleman is
not
recognized.
have the right you have not been recognized
Neither
by
gentleman
the
is
chair.
recognized. The chair now
neither have you.
recognizes the
Controls the time.
congressman
And neither have
from
you, Mr.
Louisiana, Mr. Higgins, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Because when Pete Hegseth was put under pressure, the answers didn't just fall short. They raised even more questions. And the deeper this exchange went, the harder it became to ignore what was really happening. It started with a number, $134 million. That's the figure thrown out immediately, not as a casual estimate, but as a direct accusation, a political stunt. The lawmaker called it a decision that would cost taxpayers millions while pulling thousands of service members away from critical missions around the world. And right away, the tone shifted. This wasn't polite questioning. This wasn't slow, methodical oversight. This was confrontation, the kind where every sentence is designed to corner the person sitting across the table. Because it wasn't just about the money, it was about what that money represented. 700 Marines, 4,000 National Guardsmen, all redirected, all deployed into a domestic situation that, according to critics, didn't justify that level of force. And the implication was clear. If those troops are here, then where are they not? That question hung in the air before it was even spoken out loud. Because while attention was focused on Los Angeles, something else was happening in the background. Troops who would normally be positioned in the Indo-Pacific, where tensions continue to rise. Forces that support NATO operations in Europe, units connected to Central Command in regions where instability can escalate overnight. All of that suddenly shifted, and the explanation for why never fully came. But that wasn't even the moment that changed everything, because the real turning point came with a single question. Simple, direct, impossible to misunderstand. Would the military follow an order from the president if that order violated the Constitution? For a split second, the room paused, because everyone knew exactly what was being asked. This wasn't hypothetical. This wasn't abstract. This was the foundation of how the entire system works. Civilian control of the military only functions if there are clear limits, clear lines that cannot be crossed. And this was the moment to define them. But instead of a clear answer, what came next was hesitation, deflection, a rejection of the premise itself. And that silence said more than any statement could, because when a question that fundamental doesn't get a direct answer, it doesn't just create uncertainty, it creates doubt. And doubt at that level is dangerous, because now the focus wasn't just on decisions that had already been made. It shifted to what could happen next. And that's when the conversation turned to Los Angeles. At first, it sounded straightforward. Troops deployed to maintain order, to support law enforcement, to respond to unrest. But the details didn't line up, because the area in question wasn't a sprawling crisis zone. It wasn't an entire city overwhelmed beyond control. It was a specific section, roughly 1 square mile, one out of thousands that make up Los Angeles County. And yet, the response, hundreds of Marines, thousands of Guardsmen, federal involvement at a scale that raised immediate questions. Why that level of force? What intelligence justified it? What threat assessment supported that decision? Those answers never fully came. Instead, what followed was something else entirely, a pattern. Because when asked whether local law enforcement requested help, the response wasn't confirmation. It wasn't even partial acknowledgement. It was avoidance. When asked if the governor's office had been coordinated with, the answer shifted again. Blame redirected. Responsibility pushed elsewhere. And with every deflection, the picture became clearer. This wasn't a carefully coordinated operation, at least not in the way people expect when military forces are involved domestically, because normally there's a process. Requests move through official channels, local authorities communicate needs, state leadership is involved. Coordination happens before action. That's how it's supposed to work. But here, that process seemed different. And that difference is what caught attention, because even if the deployment itself could be justified, the way it happened raised concerns that went beyond logistics. It raised questions about precedent, because if troops can be deployed without clear coordination, what stops that from happening again, and under what conditions? Those questions didn't get answered either, but they didn't need to, because by that point, the focus had already expanded beyond Los Angeles. Because while this deployment was happening domestically, the world outside wasn't slowing down. In the Indo-Pacific, strategic competition continues to intensify. Military positioning matters there. Every movement, every shift carries weight. In Europe, alliances depend on stability, on consistent support, on knowing that resources are where they need to be. In regions overseen by central command, tensions can escalate with little warning, and response time matters. So when forces are redirected away from those areas, even temporarily, it creates gaps, and gaps create risk. That's the part that doesn't always make headlines because it's not as visible as troops on the ground in a major U.S. city. It's not as immediate, but it's just as important, because military strategy isn't just about responding to what's happening now. It's about preparing for what could happen next. And when that balance shifts without a clear explanation, people start paying attention. But even that wasn't the most personal part of this exchange, because toward the end, the tone changed again. Less about strategy, less about policy, more about people. Because behind every number, every deployment, every decision, there are individuals affected by it. Service members who get reassigned with little notice, families who have to adjust instantly, plans disrupted, expectations changed. And when those changes don't come with clear reasoning, it doesn't just create confusion, it creates frustration, because for those involved, this isn't abstract, it's real. It's their time, their careers, their lives being moved based on decisions that, from their perspective, may not fully make sense. And that's where morale comes in, because a military force isn't just equipment and strategy, it's people. And when those people start to feel like they're being used for something other than their core mission, it affects how they operate. It affects trust, it affects readiness, and that's something that can't be measured in dollars, but it matters just as much. By the time the exchange came to a close, the dynamic had completely shifted. What started as a policy discussion had turned into something deeper. An examination of how decisions are made, of where authority begins and ends, of whether the systems designed to keep things balanced are still functioning the way they should. And the most striking part, many of those questions were left open because the answers that came weren't definitive, they weren't clear, and in situations like this, uncertainty becomes the story. Because people don't just pay attention to what's said, they pay attention to what isn't. And what wasn't said here may end up mattering even more in the long run, because moments like this don't exist in isolation. They set tone, they establish patterns, they shape expectations for what comes next. And whether you see this as a one-time breakdown or something more consistent depends on how you interpret what happened in that room. But one thing is clear, this wasn't just another hearing. It was a glimpse into how power is being handled behind the scenes. And for a lot of people watching, that's the part that won't be easy to forget. Because when the lines between authority, accountability, and action start to blur, it doesn't stay contained to one moment. It carries forward into future decisions, future deployments, future consequences. And that's why exchanges like this matter more than they might seem at first, because they reveal more than just disagreements. They reveal how the system actually operates when it's put under pressure and whether that system holds or starts to crack. If you want more breakdowns like this that cut through the noise and focus on what really matters behind these hearings, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Welcome to the channel.